Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Change Z. Before we get started, we will go around and do introductions. My name is Alex.
I'm Gracie.
I'm Meg.
Hi, I'm Liv.
And I'm Mackay.
So, as we're recording this, it will be mid-February. And I know this is going to come out like at the start of March, but at the moment, it is currently LGBTQ History Month. And we've kind of been looking at how this isn't just a thing that is recent, it's been going out throughout all of history.
Yeah, so there's so many examples in the past of LGBTQ figures, but it's always been hidden, so it's really hard to find people in history. But there are a lot of examples. So even people we think of as really like macho, like Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, had like gay lovers and
kind of erased almost. So it's part of history, but it's been taken away. I mean, if you think about it, there's so many things that have been written, like Sappho's poems and Emily Bronte, and even I think everyone knows this person, but no one knows it. But Jeremy Bentham, this really famous philosopher, you've got all of his works, and all the ones that are hidden that have been released really recently. Like this guy was writing in the 18th century, and he was writing about how gay people shouldn't be wrong and things like that in the 18th century. And they did this massive they brought up all of his works and released them, and they just didn't release those ones. And they had them all until really recently. And I'm talking like 2015, they refused to release these ones. And it's kind of things like that it's there, but it's not there. So everyone knows about Oscar Wilde, but no one talks about it, that kind of thing.
And I mean, a lot of that kind of stems from the sort of heavily conservative Eurocentric ideas that existed like several centuries ago. And that kind of dominated a lot of the way that people thought. Because I know that within Native America, before that was colonized, there was a celebration of these kind of like a third gender. I think it was called Two-Spirit. Back then, that was still celebrated within Native culture. And then when it was kind of dominated and colonized, things began to change a little bit. And then people began to not be accepted as much just because of the values that was being forced onto them. So kind of throughout time, there's kind of been this suppression of LGBT minds and acceptance, and it's been going on for centuries now.
Yeah, it's very much, there was that thing with, I don't know which army, I think it was the US Army or something, but it's that don't ask, don't tell thing. So it's like, you're not supposed to ask someone about it, and if someone asks you, you're not supposed to say anything about it. It's very much, you wouldn't say that for anything else, It wouldn't be like, oh, I don't know, you like Picasso's paintings, don't ask someone, but also, you can't tell them, that kind of thing. It's a very specific thing to be like, you cannot talk about this. And it's a really weird, well, not weird, but it's a really strong way to kind of bury something under the rug.
There was also another event in America. I don't know if any of you know this. It was the Disco Sucks movement. And if you know what disco is, disco was music that was kind of like a mixture of all kind of genres at that point in time. And it's where gay people, people of color, all different people came together and, just listen to music, like it represented them. So because people that were straight, that didn't like that, what they did is that they got all the disco records that they could find, gathered them together and burned them, trying to erase that culture. So people have been trying to erase gay culture and all types of other cultures for years now, and that's why a lot of people probably wouldn't know about it.
With the kind of the AIDS crisis, and it was the 80s and the 90s, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Carried on into the 90s, but with the kind of AIDS epidemic, so many people died that it's difficult to have a community without older people, Yeah. So it's kind of, you don't have those like elders in your group to be like, this is how I dealt with things, this is what it was like for me, this is how I want to make it better for you, because you just don't have those people anymore, because they died and they weren't really helped at all. So it's very much a young community, which is why people think it's like a new thing. It's not a new thing.
Yeah, it's really odd that so people just assume that it's all new, and also the idea of being transgender, that's a really, really new thing. And I guess because I'm only 16, for my whole life, or like when I've sort of been interested in the wider world, that's always been there. But it's really sort of blown my mind to think like how recent the sort of acceptance of it all is. So, you know, the word gay was only sort of used in 60s, 70s in the UK. That's how new that word is. So it is new in terms of acceptance, but it's, you know, it's not new in terms of it actually happening. It's been going on, you know, for as long as humans have been evolving. It's not new, and but it's just sad that it's all been erased.
Well, the first sex reassignment surgery was in 1951, and a man was able to get surgery to turn into a woman. So it's not a new thing. It's just oppression that's been hiding it, so it's not as accepted back then as we're trying to make it be now.
Yeah, because there are periods in history where it's just outright hate and sort of searching for LGBTQ figures, and like it just all the hate and being illegal and being killed for it. But then there's a lot of points in history where it's just like, just don't talk about it, just ignore it, and it kind of goes on, but nothing's written about it. It's just it, you know, it's the elephant in the room almost, that you just don't talk about it. And that's almost worse, because then there are like young like people who are questioning their identity and just don't have anything to look up to. So kind of it's all that confusion about that. You don't have anything to sort of look back on.
I mean, it used to be like diagnosed as a mental illness, only stopping at 1992. And if you've got parents or relatives that were around in that time, and then you want to come out to them and they're still classing it as a mental illness, that could have like severe backlash for you, or like cause more mental illness onto you.
And we're only on DSM-5 now, which are the diagnostic manuals. And it's one of those things where it's like, it shouldn't ever have been in it, but all the kind of research has been taken away. So I know there was, I don't know where I learned about it, but I think my history teacher last year, she was dead nice. Well, not last year, the year before. That's not important. But she was telling us that there was this really amazing science institute based, and they were researching like sexuality and gender and things like that. And obviously there were like Nazi book burnings and things, and the entire place, all of the research that was with it, just got taken down completely. And it's just one of those things that isn't talked about. Like, we talk about the wars a lot, don't we? It's not something that's like a secret, you know, that like all these horrible things happen, but some of them are purposefully forgotten about.
So they're forgetting it so that other people aren't saying that they're directly against the LGBTQ community, but by hiding that, they're also hiding the fact that they did all the research on it.
Yeah, and also all the research that the scientists had done in Germany, because it was, the research institute was in Germany, which is why it was burnt down. All the research these scientists had done was completely lost, which, you know, that's kind of one of the worst things you can do, is to kind of take like all this work that these people have been doing to try and help people and just take it away. You know, it's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, and that also happened, you know, in 1988 in Britain, with so there was a law, and they had a section 28 which basically banned any literary that mentioned gay people at all, and it just so banned it from any schools, libraries, workplaces, and said that you just can't talk to children, can't talk about it. And it meant that loads of stuff got burned, and that's, you know, we're never going to get that back.
Yeah, I mean, we've got all this access to, like, you know, it's like the internet age and all that, you know, we've been able to just go and Google this right now. But, you know, I don't know when the internet was created, but, you know, like 20, 30 years ago, you couldn't just like go and Google it. You had to like go to your library or like order a book or something, or ask people. And it's, you know, it's not the kind of thing that's going to show up in your, you know, random local library.
In the UK, that law was only taken away in 2003, I think, in England, in 2002 in Scotland. So, you know, our parents, like, they wouldn't have read about it in libraries. That was still happening. It wasn't talked about in schools at all.
And the government weren't allowed to promote it either, so there'd be no television programs about it, no cartoons about it, so no one could really learn anything about it until the internet was created, I suppose.
Because even when it comes to television shows and stuff, it's only been recently that it's been shown and accepted, because it has been around for a little while. I think in the 90s on the show Biker Grove, there was a storyline that kind of dealt with someone being gay and identifying as gay, and that received a lot of backlash when that first came out. And even television shows today, like the cartoon show Arthur, their teacher was in a gay marriage in one episode, and it got banned in some states in America, I think, and that faced a lot of backlash. Same with, I think, The Next Step last year had a similar storyline that kind of got backlash as well. And it's weird to think that even today, when we do get that representation, that it's hard to find it in a place where it's tolerated.
It's good to have representation in TV shows, but sometimes the producers rely on just stereotypes.
Yeah, it's either stereotypes or like really tragic and they get killed. And it's like, that's all we get.
Have someone who's been through it and have that experience on the show helping to direct it and produce it if they can't find an actor that fits that description, because at least you've got some like sense of realness into the characters, so it doesn't get portrayed in mock.
I feel like if you're playing an actor, you should play the actor that has your sexuality. I don't think straight actors should play gay like characters, or gay people like actors play straight characters.
Russell T Davis, who wrote It's a Sin and Queer as Folk and Years and Years, he's like all the actors, so all the characters who are gay are played by gay actors. Sort of like so Queer as Folk was really revolutionary in that, I can't remember when that was broadcast.
Yeah, as well as suppose they for their trans actors, they actually had trans people play those people, all those characters.
See, that makes sense, but at the same time you're acting, you know. I think you shouldn't go and play a queer character without talking to people. Like, you know, if you're going to, you should really ask people about it first.
I think it's about,
be like, I'm going to act like, you know, it's like when they play like gay characters in like a stereotypy way. So like in what's that show where there's like a really big family and there's Cam and Mitch, the two
Modern Family.
It's like they're not gay characters for gay representation, they're gay characters for straight people to like think this representation.
I think the actors that play them just need to have the right emotion into the characters to portray them correctly. Like, it doesn't matter, I don't think it matters what the actor's sexuality is, as long as they can put the emotion and the like realness into it, so it's not mocked or portrayed incorrectly.
I think it's about the writing as well, because if you're researching different characters, if the writer writes it as, oh yes, a man skips down the road singing a song, like, it's going to be whoever plays it is going to be stereotypical and not representative.
TV is a representation of the world at large, but of course the representations are only representative of a very small microcosm of the world where it's kind of deemed okay. There's a lot of places in the world where it's still heavily criminalized to be a member of the LGBTQ plus community.
In Indonesia, you've still got the authorities that are currently going after the LGBTQ plus community and trying to get rid of their rights completely. So there's this draft that's been put into place. It's not been like completely like accepted yet, so we don't know if it's actually gone through. But basically, if you have premarital sex, you can have a year in jail. And while that doesn't just like apply to same-sex couples aren't legally recognized in Indonesia, so all same-sex conduct has been illegalized basically, so they don't have any of the rights that heterosexual couples would have in that country.
There's also, I think it's in Indonesia as well, there was another law, it was a few years ago, where you could get stoned for having anal sex, and it's the same type of situation as that. It's trying to oppress gay people, so they can't have that relationship between them, which is, you know, different from straight people. Because
I think that's in Brunei. I think the president or whoever's in charge of Brunei tweeted about like stoning gay people. That was a couple of years ago. I remember that.
There's a lot of governments that actually have homophobic views. I know in Brazil, the government has lots of homophobic views and try to restrict their rights and say that they're not, like, you can't be a family if you're both of the same sex. But then the Supreme Court overruled it. So
I think there is 70 countries, I believe, is that right, Olivia?
Yeah, I think it's 70.
That have illegalized gay like homosexuality and like anything LGBTQ plus. And I think the number went down to 4. That still has the death penalty for being,
People somehow see gay like sexual relations as something that should be stopped, but don't see how a same-sex couple having a sexual intimate relationship nowhere near you, not disturbing you, not being in your space, not pushing it in your face, is something that we should try and stop or objectify or make it something that it's not supposed to be.
Like, even in the grand scheme of things, when you think about it, like, being gay as a crime doesn't even hurt anybody. So, like, it shouldn't be a crime. Even if it is, that is, if it's like crime and punishment, it's meant to be like the cruelty of the punishment fits the cruelty of the crime. There is no cruelty, so there should not be a cruelty of punishment,
You can have a heterosexual couple and no one bats an eye, and they're not hurting anyone, and then you've got a same-sex couple and just them walking down the street or something, people instantly think it's a sin or that they've done something wrong, and then get punished.
There's a video of so like 2 men holding hands walking through the streets of Russia, like in Moscow, and just people spitting on them, shouting like slurs at them and swear words, and one guy like pushes them apart and then starts like attacking one of them, and that's in Russia, where it's not even illegal. It's just illegal to talk about it, but that's not even one of the countries where it's just being gay is illegal, but there's still still that hatred.
Like the thing is as well that like people that view homosexuality as like unnatural, it is completely natural because there has been some cases of homosexuality in animals. You have examples of like swans, dolphins, whales, some insects, and whales do engage in like homosexual sex as well. So like it's not an unnatural thing. So I don't get where the mindset came from, other than bigotry.
So the thing I heard was so homosexuality is in 44 different species, but homophobia is only in 1, humans.
Yeah,
so.
I saw that.
I think that a large part of the issue stems from kind of the hereditary side of things. Like this is passed on from generation to generation. And there are lots of countries that take Saudi Arabia, for example. Their country's kind of built on a certain set of principles, and homophobia and misogyny and sexism kind of tie into some of those core principles that the country ended up being based on in the first place. So when you take a look at homophobia and that sort of stuff around the world, it's easy from our position to say, look at that and identify that as being wrong. But it's very easy when you look at other cultures and other parts of the world to imagine yourself being on the right side of things. If you were born and raised in a country like Saudi Arabia or Russia or Indonesia, these countries where it's not seen as acceptable to be a member of the LGBTQ plus community, it's easy for us to sit here and think, well, of course that's the wrong thing to believe. But if you were born over there, chances are you might end up having those kinds of thoughts against it simply because of the way that the country is structured and organized, and all of the ways that people are brought up within that country kind of reinforce some of the negative values that people end up having and passing on to their children and stuff.
Yeah, it's like you're a product of your environment, and all the things that happen to you kind of like build up and add to you, nature versus nurture and all that.
Yeah.
But
it also proves that being homophobic isn't natural, because the only way you could be homophobic if it's like taught upon you, nurture, and like you don't come naturally out of the womb like hating gay people, like burn all the flags. It doesn't happen. So it is just a fact of nature versus nurture, like how we are, like how Gracie said, we are shaped by our surroundings.
Yeah, and it's if you see someone who's like homophobic or something and isn't currently trying to attack you, you shouldn't kind of like go and shout at them. You should, I know a lot of the time it's like not your responsibility, but if you have the time and the patience to like teach people, like if you're a teacher and they're like kids in your class, you have that opportunity to like calmly like show people like empathy and kindness and things, but people shouldn't be expected to kind of help other people see that way, so if there's like some kind of homophobic kid in your class, it shouldn't be upon like the gay kids to like change them or whatever, and a lot of the time that's kind of you're kind of given the responsibility of it, of like, oh, go and like talk to him, go and like help. It's like, that's not your problem, you know?
It definitely should be put into the curriculum to like educate the kids more on like LGBTQ. They should go through the history, especially in the UK. Like if they're teaching kids in the UK, they should definitely go through that history and just teach the kids what certain words mean, or you know what I mean, like go through it with them so they can be educated and move forward from it.
Most of my like gay knowledge is from gay TV shows such as Drag Race.
Yeah.
Even though like you don't really see Drag Race as like a serious thing, they do talk about some very serious topics. Like there was one example on Canadian Drag Race where they talked about a charity called like I think it was Rainbow Runaway, where they get gay people or people in like LGBT plus community, and they basically like, so say you have someone from like Saudi Arabia or like Uganda or somewhere like that doesn't allow homosexual relations, and like it's illegal there and you can get killed or stuff like that. They basically, you can email them and they can get you out of the country, and they let you, you know, have refuge in Canada, and you can live in Canada as a refugee. And some people were talking about their stories on the show, and in I think it was Uganda, there was the guy that was talking had 4 of his friends killed for being in that community, and there were 125 people arrested for being in a gay friendly bar. Not even like a gay bar, a gay friendly bar. So when like it was a really good point that this guy, this drag queen said, it was like we always see numbers and statistics all the time about things that are happening in other countries, but when you put like faces to numbers, it really is heartbreaking to see how like this affects people.
Talking about Uganda, so it is like you can be killed for being gay in Uganda. And there's this really powerful photo that I've seen where they're holding a pride parade in Uganda, and it makes me cry every time I see it. But it's like that power to say, you know, we are here, and we're not just going to hide who we are because of the law. Like it, yeah, that's just really powerful, and there is positive movements going on. It's not all really doom and gloom.
There's also like, it's not all countries are bad as well. Like you have one country, for example, as in New Zealand, where their prime minister actually went. She was the first prime minister to actually go to like participate in a pride parade, which I found really admirable, and I was really happy about it. That's why I love her to bits. Honestly, she's a gem.
I mean, unfortunately, you get violence in a lot of countries to LGBTQ, especially by like authorities like the police that's supposed to protect you. I know in El Salvador, the police are attacking them and making homophobic and transphobic comments. Gangs are attacking them, individuals are, but the police aren't going to arrest them for that. But there are positive stories coming out of those countries as well. Like in El Salvador in 2019, a judge allowed a trans woman to change her identity and her name legally. So although there is like bad things coming out of the country, you can show that LGBTQ motions are moving forward.
A lot of this hate kind of comes from the things that we learn and the kind of stereotypes that are kind of been passed down, and it's our duty to kind of reject the negative imagery that we've kind of been presented with, and it's our duty to kind of carry forward that positive image, those positive messages, and kind of educate a lot more people. Because naturally, as you get older, you're a lot less, how do I say this? You're a lot less open to certain other possibilities that exist within the world, because you're raised believing the world is a certain way. And even the most open-minded people still struggle trying to get to grips with certain things, because there is a lot to learn. And I think that our generation can kind of be a force for good if we can use like our own platforms, our own voices, to allow other people to learn as well. And a lot of that, I think, would be aided if there was more within the education system itself that broke down some of those stereotypes, break down some of those walls, and kind of open up the conversation a little bit more.
Yeah, I think a lot of hatred comes from ignorance, and so like the amount of times I've heard like year sevens using gay as an insult, but I don't think they quite know what it means, or certainly when I was in year 7, I didn't know what it meant. And I think, yeah, anything that's different, people sort of target. And I think this idea of having a norm and a difference is really like detrimental. So I think it's about sort of creating like an environment where there is no norm, because if there is no norm, then you're not trying to fight against it. It's just, so like when you come out, so having to come out as gay, it's like, oh, I'm not normal. Whereas if you have no expectations of what a person is, then it's just how you are. Like, I am gay, I'm straight, what, like, you know. And I think if you sort of don't have that sort of, this is how normal people are, and then difference, then it just makes it a lot easier to talk about it.
There was this really good advert where like straight people came out to their parents as straight, and I found that really moving, because when you look at it that way, it doesn't make sense. Like,
that was in Love, Simon, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah. And
Yeah,
it's like it didn't make sense in my mind, because
In a weird sense, it was kind of funny because it's not expected. Like,
Yeah.
but then when you think about it, you realise
how
it's weird
ridiculous
that,
it is.
yeah,
you have to like come out. You can't just like, you know, be who you are. You have to actually put label on things.
it's a weird thing to kind of make it a thing, you know. It kind of creates this them and us. So it's a massive thing in kind of evolution of having this them and us. So it's like a way of building society, but we're not cavemen, you know. There doesn't have to be a them and us anymore. It's not, you know, we need our group to have these resources and a them that can't have them because we want them. It's not that anymore. It's so that kind of translation of like groups of like 20 people that is us has now translated into the modern world as something
On a more broad scale.
Yeah, it's on like a larger scale, but it's kind of skewed, it's kind of warped, and it's not beneficial anymore.
Yeah, it kind of separates them from the main society, or makes them feel different from everyone else, because they have to make this big thing about coming out and then dealing with consequences, if there are any, from that. And then they then have pride, which is for them to feel included in a group that the whole society might not make them feel like they're included in. And I don't think that's right. I think we should all be one society and not make a big deal about like who you're attracted to or your gender. But society's made it as a thing where they feel that they are not the same, or like the same as everyone else in the society that we all live in.
I feel like pride is more about celebrating
like
LGBT, where everyone can be involved and they can come together as a community, rather than having that like divide between like LGBT and straight people. Because straight people do go to pride and they do celebrate with their gay friends. And I feel like that's what pride's all about. It's about bringing people together and like, you know what, celebrating the fact that people are who they are.
The thing with pride and stuff is that it's trying to find a way for people to feel welcomed and celebrated, because a lot of the way that we learn it from one perspective. We kind of get a heteronormative view of how society is and how relationships and that sort of thing, how that all works and functions, because a lot of what is embedded in the curriculum is taught from the perspective of a heterosexual couple. So some of the lessons you'd get in like form or PSHE, all of that stuff is kind of taught from one perspective, and you don't really get that element of learning about the LGBT community and how they do the certain things that straight couples do. And it's that kind of disconnect that begins like implicitly, that kind of divide that people form in their minds, because they're not really taught things from their perspective. They only really understand it from their own.
Especially with like sex education, it's always giving you the sex education from a heterosexual perspective. So it's always talking about a man and a woman. And if you see videos about couples or reproduction, it's always a man and a woman. It never shows a same-sex couple as a family. So it never focuses on that. So then you'd be like 11 when you're learning this. And then if that builds on and that's all you've been taught, then you come to believe that it's not normal to have a same-sex family, which then builds on the oppression.
In my school, we only did it in biology, and it was just, you know, like the reproductive system and things. And then we had one lesson where a cover teacher made us watch a film that was like early 2000s, really bad acting, a film that had gay characters in, and that was our lesson on it. And then we had to, like, at the start, before, when we started watching the film, we had to guess who was gay or not.
Oh,
and
Christ.
then the amount of homophobia in that lesson was just, it was really uncomfortable. And that's the only lesson we had on it.
In my personal experience, as Megan was saying about sex education, I was in year 7. I was questioning my sexuality. I didn't have like a role model or any like knowledge about the LGBT and stuff like that. And when I was questioning my sexuality, I was in sex education just learning about straight sex. And when I asked the question about like gay sex, the whole class like kind of looked down upon me like I was saying something wrong. So it really is something that should be like people are educated about, because it's called homophobia for a reason. It's like a fear of something that you don't know or you don't understand.
Yeah, and it kind of, you know, when you don't get taught about it, then you end up like, if you don't know something, what do? You go and Google it, don't you? And you know,
How do you Google something you don't know though?
You can teach like young kids about this, but you can't teach them about kind of other versions of the same thing. And it's kind of saying that, I don't know, but I don't know, I can't remember what the point I was going to make, but it was kind of like, you know, when people teach about kind of gay people in school and stuff, they never talk about like love or anything. Like, if you look at in the dictionary or something, it'll be like attracted to or like has sex with or something, and it's never like, I don't know, they never talk about like the nice romance bits, you know, they never talk about like cute things.
Well, building on that, there are parts of the LGBTQ plus community that are relationships but they don't have the sexual aspect, they just have the closeness of it. And I think it's also partly down to the teacher. Like, yes, they've got to follow the curriculum, but they can also bring their own aspects into that. So they should show you videos and educate you on the different aspects of the LGBTQ plus community, different videos, different websites to go on, so then you're not searching the web and finding things that 11-year-olds shouldn't find. Or in a limited case, they shouldn't be bringing homophobia into the classroom, even if that wasn't their objective.
Yeah, and also when, because teacher said, oh yeah, we're talking about the LGBT community, although actually my teacher, she did a PowerPoint about it and she put LGBG. I can't remember, she just got it wrong, and I'm like, it's not hard. But
like 4 letters and a plus, that's it.
Yeah. But it's only ever gay relationships. It's not, they don't talk about being non-binary, being trans, like gender fluidity, asexuality. There's so much more that it's just LG really that's talked about.
There's a lot of stuff that they don't know because they're never taught about it. So it's down to places like the internet and YouTube to kind of answer some of those questions that people have. So there's a YouTuber that I watch, his name is Anthony Padilla, and he does I Spent a Day With, where he has conversations with people that belong to different communities. So he's spoken to autistic people, disabled people, people who've had the coronavirus vaccine, that sort of thing. And he's done videos that kind of look at the community. So I spent a day with asexual people. I spent a day with transgender people. And there are a lot of key terminology that is embedded within those videos that I didn't even realize existed, that kind of, if you're not aware of those kind of labels, then you're not really going to understand that sort of degree of truth to yourself. Because I know that I was watching one of the videos and there were terms like demisexual, demiromantic, those kind of things being thrown around. And I didn't really know about them beforehand until I went and had a look for myself. And then online finding out that I kind of identify as grey asexual and demiromantic. These are things that I didn't even know were terms that existed that kind of encompass who I am personally. And I know that I found it kind of hard thinking, oh, I am exactly what it says on the tin, you know, like I'm straight, I'm heterosexual, but there was more nuances to the way that I felt about certain things within relationships that I didn't understand myself, and that kind of made me worried for prospective relationships in the future. And now that I kind of have that knowledge with me, I can say, hey, if there's someone that I'm talking to in the future, I can say, hey, I'm this and I'm this, and it can kind of help that person to understand me, and it helps me to understand myself as well. So there's a lot of ways in which people can kind of begin to understand who they are. And it's all about trying to find places that have those resources, that has that information, so that if somebody comes to you with the information, or you come to someone with the information, you're kind of on a level of mutual understanding there.
It also helps people, like having those YouTube channels can help people to not mislabel themselves or to mislabel others. If you've got all that information in front of you, which you can then go back to and work on your knowledge with it, it helps you either be an ally, or helps you to not mislabel yourself, or potentially unintentionally offend others.
Yeah, I think labeling is a huge sort of thing, and it's really useful. So when I first heard of like demi-romantic, and that, I was like, oh, I thought everyone felt like that, and you sort of able to find a community, and I think labeling is important. But then there's another part of me that's like, I have no idea. So whenever I have to fill in a form, it's like, what's your sexual orientation? I'm like, I have no idea. I'm sort of like questioning at the moment. And I feel like there's quite a lot of pressure to sort of have like to know before you talk to anyone about it. And I feel really lucky that I'm surrounded by friends and family that kind of I can just talk to and go, oh yeah, I have a crush on this person, or without sort of going, oh, I'm gay or I'm straight. I sort of hope that in the future, also everyone will sort of get that opportunity to be able to just talk about it really freely. But I know that's just not the case for people that I know. They can't do that. But yeah, I feel quite privileged that I can just talk about it freely.
Yeah, it's a lot better when you kind of do that research for yourself and you kind of begin to understand more about who you are. Like there are so many terms like sex indifferent, sex repulsed, sex favorable, these kind of things that I didn't know about until I kind of undertook the research myself. And there's just so many stories. Everyone's got their own individual story with themselves and who they are. And we actually asked you guys to send in some stories for us, and we've got back a couple of responses. So we're just going to have a quick comb through some of those, kind of just going to display that even within our own little community, just how different people's lives have been and how people's own journeys of self-discovery have kind of taken place.
So one of the responses we got back said that this person came out at 16. Initially, their parents weren't fully understanding, but after a couple of years, they understood and supported them. It says since they've come out, they've had one partner of the same sex. I think it's interesting that it took their parents a couple of years to fully understand it. And I think that's down to back in those days, people of an older age didn't have the knowledge or the understanding to really go into depth with the LGBTQ community.
And I mean, if someone's kind of thinking about it, you'll have been thinking about it for like a really long time. So you've given yourself years to come to grips with something. So I suppose it will take other people a while, but at the same time, it can be really hurtful. But I think there has to be that level of understanding of, I've been here for 3, 4, I don't know, age 16, I don't know how many years that would have been. But there's also that thing of give people time. Also, how much time do you give before you just go, okay, this isn't going to happen,
I think when you initially come out, you want some sort of support, no matter how. If they don't understand it, you still want them to be able to support you. And I think not having that initial support can make it a lot harder when you go into your future relationships, because you don't know if they're fully behind you. But I think it just took them time to come to grips with it, and now they know that they've got that support behind them.
When you don't experience it yourself, there's going to be naturally a couple of questions, especially when it's kind of people being open with this sort of thing is so new. So people are going to have, it might take a little bit of time for people to adjust, but I'm glad that in the long term, family kind of came around to the idea, begun to understand a little bit more. And I think that kind of support network is really important when you're kind of talking to people about this for the first time.
Yeah, because it's kind of, if there's that kind of initial rejection, it will kind of hurt. But so you do understand that there has to be some level of understanding, but at the age of 16, they are the adults, you know, like you're still a child, so they need to kind of, you know, support you and say, okay, I'm going to be the grown-up about this and make sure I'm kind of empathetic, you know.
I feel like at that age, you're kind of still somewhat dependent on your parents and you want them to be proud of you. And if you feel like they are rejecting you, you might close yourself off and feel like you're not enough to make them proud. Obviously, it's probably not that like bad. I'm probably like overreacting, but if they feel like that initially, it could have some like serious backlash onto it.
So another one says, it took me ages to realise I'm a lesbian, mostly because of the internalized homophobia, and I still struggle to say it at all. I only really let myself realise it when I dated guys and felt so anxious every time I saw them. I eventually realised it probably wasn't the normal butterflies I thought it was.
I think that's down to like people have been pushed into this is the norm, like this is what you should date, and then whoever you date you will feel butterflies, but I think it's down to how you handle it and how you think you should be feeling. And if you've got internalized homophobia, you might not be open to new possibilities or open to, oh, maybe I'm not actually attracted to men, maybe I'm not feeling how I should be feeling in a relationship.
Because like being a teenager is just hard anyway, like trying to work out feelings and things, and especially when you've got that kind of like added layer where you're not quite sure what like having feelings means, about like how you feel about someone. And yeah, that internalized homophobia is sort of this is I'll just pick a boy who's nice and go out with them, which is like I guess quite a lot of people just go, oh, I should be dating someone because all my friends are, and then just realize that it's not the same, I guess.
And there can be that level of reluctance to kind of accept yourself as well,
Mm.
because when you're living in such a heteronormative world like the one we have now, I can understand where that pressure comes from to say, this is who I am, but at the same time, maybe it's just a phase, maybe it's something that I don't understand fully. And it's good to kind of push the boat out, experiment with some of those options. But as long as you kind of settle with something that makes you 100% comfortable in your own relationships, in your own mind, in your own body, that's the real end game, I suppose.
But I guess it could have also been used to hide or make her like, maybe she wanted to hide or repress the fact that she was feeling differently to what she felt like she should be feeling, maybe. And obviously, yeah, we are in a heteronormative world, so maybe she didn't want to like be different or break the norm that we have made for ourselves in society.
And it's like a marathon, not a sprint, in terms of trying to understand that part of yourself. So it's hard to kind of feel like you know who you are and accept it straight away. Like it's going to be something more over the long term that you kind of come to grips with. And a part of that does end up coming back to, well, maybe that's not who I am. But when you begin to press yourself into having that mindset, it does end up making you unhappy. So I understand. I suppose, I mean, obviously it's not my story, it's not my experience. I can't pretend to understand what they're going through. But I can see where that kind of mindset comes in. And it's just knowing that even if that's not who you are, that mindset is still okay when you're kind of beginning to figure things out. So another story we got was about gender identity. And this person wrote, I am comfortable with he, him pronouns, but I don't see myself as a man particularly. I've changed my name to better identify with my gender, but I'm still cis.
Well, personally for me, I'm in like the kind of same boat. Like I go by whatever pronouns now because like I identify as gender fluid. So I don't really feel like I like any one particular end of the gender spectrum, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm in the middle. Does that make sense? So like
Yeah.
so like it's just I feel like gender now is like it's overrated. Like people like it's so fluid now. And like there's not really like any labels that need like we don't really need any labels for gender anymore. I don't think anyway, because like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, gender is just such a social construct. It's like the idea of wearing dresses and trousers. It just, it that doesn't represent gender. That's just how you want to dress. And I think that's the sort of big thing that's going on right now, you know, with Harry Styles wearing the dress and
on Vogue. Yeah,
you see loads of like stories of parents letting their little boys wear dresses or their daughters dressing up in suits, and you see the amount of backlash they get. Like, there's some people who are so fixated on gender norms and they try so hard to enforce it, and that just creates such a bad stereotype for what a girl should be or what a boy should be or what a certain gender should look like, when it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like just fabric, you know?
Yeah.
It's just something you wear so that you're not like streaking everywhere. So like,
clothing does have a purpose, and clothing has a purpose to, you know, like shelter your body from like cold and stuff like that, and also to cover yourself so you're not indecent in public. And the fact that some people like associate a certain gender with a piece of clothing is just, it really is just preposterous. Because last time I checked, that like just inanimate objects don't have a gender. It's just that they are things that you should use. Like, you don't see me going around saying, oh, you have a Samsung? Sorry, they're only for boys. Only boys can have them. When you think about it that way, it really doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and also the idea of colours being gendered. So, I mean, this blew my mind when I found this out, but basically, so before like 1940s, blue was a girl's colour because it's like delicate, and pink was a boy's colour because it was strong. And that changed. I mean, it kind of like changed a bit, but then, so Hitler labelled gay men with a pink triangle to identify them, and then people then associated the colour pink with being effeminate, as in like with gay men. So then the colour pink then became a feminine colour, and we still go by that, and it blows my mind.
Is that where like that saying where all like real men wear pink? Is that like where that comes from? Because I feel like that's a saying.
I've not heard that saying.
I think it was a way of kind of breaking stereotypes. So it's like, you know how it's like, my brother said it to me the other day, there's this phrase that's boys don't cry but men do, that kind of thing. So it's like kind of breaking the stereotype of like, you know, how it's childish to think that like you have to be like really masculine, you know, boys don't cry, boys don't wear pink, boys get in fights. Like, it's kind of trying to break those stereotypes.
But those stereotypes
that's why
are imprinted from such a young age. Like, you used to see nurseries, if it was a girl it would be pink, and if it was a boy it would be blue, and you saw all the little baby clothes that picked out. And I think now we're starting to break them for going to more neutral colours like cream or yellow. So I think now, because the generation is younger and more accepting, we're now breaking those norms, which I think we should have done ages ago, to be honest, but at least it's being done.
With like androgynous people, like people that like, you know, dress as like both genders, or like wear article clothing that are assigned to girls, articles of clothing that are assigned to boys. Like, I really like look up to those people because they have like the bravery like and the strength to like to prove to society that like clothes don't have gender, and I really like admire that and respect that.
Yeah, it's, when you think about it, it's such kind of an abstract kind of concept of like, we give meaning to things. So it's like for some reason we've taken away like meanings, like, I don't know, yellow is like friendships and stuff, and then made it a kind of a gender thing, and it's a very binary way to see things.
But I think we are moving away from that sort of binary concept and the having that norm, and I think we are seeing a lot of positive change.
Harry Styles on the cover of Vogue.
Yeah, and while there was a load of backlash, at least it's sort of being talked about it, and a lot of people, like the majority of people, are like, it's fine, you can do what you want. It's sort of nice to hear people going like, oh, it doesn't matter. I mean, like, it is important, but it's just sort of, again, it is clothes, it's makeup, it's anything goes almost, and that's like nice.
Having Harry Styles be that like person on the cover of Vogue wearing a dress, other like young people can look up to him. That's like another role model as well. So it's having a more positive effect on younger generations as well, that will see that and realize it's okay to, you know, to be like, to wear what you want.
Yeah, it's like with how loads more people start coming out now who are kind of like, I'm not saying child stars, but kind of people that more people know, like Elliot Page, who's still filming for the Umbrella Academy, and like he was in Juno and loads of things like that. And it was really sweet that there was a post on Instagram saying, hey, this is who I am. And then the next post wasn't, can everyone please stop shouting at me? The next post was, thank you so much for like how much love everyone's giving. And it's that kind of step away from people having to say, please stop shouting at me for this, you know? It's nice to see, I know, people being like successful and happy, like with JoJo Siwa, she came out and like was like, hey, this is my girlfriend, and the first thing that happened wasn't her career ended. The first thing that happened was she was on the Jimmy Fallon show going, I love her so much, it's so nice, you know? And it's becoming more of a happy thing to see on the news.
Yeah, and the thing with Elliot Page and JoJo Siwa is it's good to finally have those mentors and those people to begin to look up to in the world, because it makes life a lot easier for those people who are kind of struggling to come to terms with their gender identity or their sexuality. Seeing these people on their platforms talking about who they are in an open, honest, and earnest way, it kind of begins to break down some of the negativity that people might internalize and use against themselves. Because it's very easy to fall into that trap of, this isn't normal, this isn't who I'm meant to be, but there should be nothing stopping you from being the person that you are. And it's good that now we live in a world where people actually can express who they are, and they can break the norms of masculinity, femininity, whatever it is. They don't have to conform to a certain way. And I think that at the end of the day, having people that can help you to realize that is something that can be really gratifying for people trying to make their way into the world.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for watching this episode of Change Z. We have links in the bio now. Unlike last time, we now have ways for you to find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. So make sure you follow us there and kind of follow us along as we kind of begin to grow and develop as a podcast. We're also now available on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts from. And the link to all those places will be in the description of the video. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.